Welcome to another video from explainingthefuture.com. This time I want to talk about the recent decision of the British people to leave the European Union. Now, most of the work I do as a futurist has to do with new technologies, where I can look at what's going on in the lab and see what will be in the world probably in the next 10, 20, 30 years, things like that. And I also deal with sustainability, where you can look at the world's resources and what's happening to them. So I don't normally get involved in political discussion, and indeed this won't be really a political video. It's about the broader issues that come out of what I think we can learn from the Brexit result. But that said, inevitably clients ask me about political issues, and in the past few weeks and months I have been asked quite a lot by clients about what I thought would happen in terms of the vote. And my prediction about a month or so ago, for example, to a large number of chief executives in the UK, was that we would probably see a vote to leave by about a few percent. And of course, that's what happened. I also happened to call the UK general election result last year very accurately when everyone said it would be a coalition. I said, no, the Conservatives will get a majority, about 20. That happened as well. So I don't have any magic wands in terms of my futurist work, but I do try to stay in touch with what's going on with the mood of the world. I've done a lot of work here on narrative change, and I think we can learn a lot about future narrative by looking at the Brexit result. Right, the first thing I wanted to say is I am quite shocked about how many people are saying, what a surprising result. You know, the Brexit result, the decision of the British people to leave the European Union, is not surprising. It's about as surprising as the fact you might fall off if you walk across a tightrope strung between two very tall mountains on a windy day. The Brexit result we should have seen coming for a long, long time. Some of us did see it coming. And that's because it's simply a reflection of the fact that the establishment is out of touch with the rest of the population. And we're seeing that all around the world. The people with the loudest voices, the people who dominate the media and industry and all that sort of stuff, very, very small percentage of people do not get what everybody else is thinking about. And so politicians are out of touch in the UK, they're certainly out of touch in Europe. And if you look at the United States, you see the rise of Donald Trump. Whether you like Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump, the rise of Trump, which I think again was highly predictable, I personally think right now from what I know of American politics that actually he will become the next president, but whether he does or he doesn't, the fact that we've got a lot of people voting for something different, trying to break the current establishment model, is the critical thing. Now, I think the thing we should learn from this is that there's a real problem that particularly people running businesses don't get this, and of course politicians don't get this. A question I'm often asked by people in business when I'm going out doing client work as a futurist is people say to me, why did no one predict the 2007-8 financial crisis? To which my answer always is, well, actually, they did predict it. There were reports in the popular press 5 years before it happened of subprime in America crashing the global economy. The predictions were there. It's just that the people with the loud voices, the people running the establishment, didn't want to know. It wasn't convenient to know. That they didn't want to be picking up on the narrative of what was going on in the world if it was different to their narrative. And it's exactly the same with the Brexit issue, that you can see at the grassroots level of what the majority of people who don't have the loud voices are thinking and doing. It was in one place and the politicians were in the other. So I think if my clients, if people more generally should learn anything from Brexit, is that they've got to stop being surprised about things that the establishment keeps ignoring. And there's many of those. The establishment is ignoring things like climate change in exactly the same way it ignored the financial crisis, which was inevitable, and the way it's ignoring how people are getting out of touch with politicians, or politicians are getting out of touch with people, more accurately, in terms of big issues like those reflected in the EU debate. Right, I think the next thing to say, the thing that worries me perhaps even more than the last one, is this issue about who made the mistake. You can see now in the British press and in the British political parties and across Europe and also around the world more generally, people saying, well, why did they get this wrong? Not referring necessarily to the fact that the British people have made the wrong decision. we may have done. I voted to leave. I don't think it was the wrong decision. We'll never really know, because in any big decision you don't know what would have happened the other way. And it certainly wasn't the case if a vote to remain would have been a vote for the status quo. That wouldn't have happened. But actually, we keep seeing people say things like, certain political parties, certain political leaders got it wrong. Now, that really worries me, because it suggests that they think that the supporters of certain political parties should do what the leaders of those parties actually say and think. Now, yes, leaders set direction. Good leaders set direction. I say that to clients all the time. But it has to be the case that the people who lead political parties in particular reflect the views of people in the country. And clearly that has moved apart. So I don't think anybody in the political system made a mistake in terms of they should have convinced people to do this. They simply didn't understand what was going on. So the issue here isn't that the Remain campaign went wrong. The issue is we have a lot of politicians in the UK, about 80% of them, and across Europe and more broadly around the world, who aren't in contact with normal people, with people who don't have the loud voices who get into the media, etc. And that again is something I think we need to reflect on. We don't need to improve the sort of spin and the marketing of the message of political parties. We need to make sure political parties get in sync with what is being thought about and what people want to happen in the real world. Right, another thing I want to address, looking more broadly about this, is I've seen several things in the press in the past few days saying Brexit signals the end of globalisation, particularly that's a concern coming now out of China. What would I say about that? Well, the thing I'd say was yes, but we should not be surprised about that. Globalisation is one of the biggest follies driven by economics of the past 30-ish years. It is utterly unsustainable for us to keep shipping masses and masses of products and indeed people around the planet on a very regular basis. Most countries in the world have now signed up to the Paris Agreement made back in December 2015 to start seriously limiting greenhouse gas emissions by 2020 and then to continue to cut their emissions on 5-year basis, 5-year targets after that. If we have any hope at all of meeting the Paris Agreement, which in theory the establishment has signed up to, although as I said earlier I don't think the establishment really in sync with climate change. But if we are going to do that, we are going to stop the mass shipping of all products. For most of human history, most of our food, most of the other things we consume, 80% of it came within a few tens of miles of where people lived. We will have to get back to that if we are to live sustainably on the planet we have. And yes, we might go out into space and do other things. I've made videos about that here, but in the short and medium term, we have to live within our bounds. And that will see a pulling back of globalization. So we really shouldn't be surprised by that. This might just be one of the first signals of it. We're going to see retrenchment. We're going to see tribalism around the world. That isn't a terrible thing. If you read the work of someone like Timothy Leary, who put forward the Gaia hypothesis, the idea that the planet is a living system that has to look after itself and we're fighting against it to some extent, then he talks about certain nations, and the UK is one of them, being lifeboat nations. Recognising the fact that over this century, we're going to see a lot of competition for resources, so they get scarcer and scarcer, and migration is going to be an enormous issue. Based on the fact that there will be certain places you want to live because they've got the resources, not just the economic prosperity, and many places you don't. You look at things like the UN's figures on water supply. We know that by 2025, 2/3 of the world's population face stressed or restricted water supplies. That will drive where people want to be. Now, it would be great to say we'll all share the resources we've got in a nice way and we'll all go and live in the places everybody wants to live for the greatest prosperity. I don't think that will happen. It's a lovely idea, but I think we're into darker and darker times in the world as we get more constraint on resource in the context of our current population. And unfortunately, I don't see this with any glee at all, that means we are going to start to see, the borders going up, the walls going up in a lot of countries over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And I think the politicians and the historians might look back in 20, 30, 40 years' time at the Brexit decision as the start of that, as the start of a realignment about what is realistic. And the end of globalisation, Not completely, no. We'll still have a global planet, global trade in electronic goods and that sort of stuff. But we are going to get less global this century. That is inevitable. And we really shouldn't be surprised by that. So, I'd like to leave you with two thoughts that come out of all this. The first is that the biggest danger facing the world right now is not Brexit, it's not Britain leaving the European Union. The biggest danger is talking ourselves down because of what's happened. That means the UK talking its own economy down, Europe talking itself down, but the whole world economy. Right around the world, from China to the United States to Europe, we're seeing the media and politicians and business people saying, oh, this is terrible, everything's going to be awful. That'll become self-fulfilling. And we all have a responsibility in maintaining confidence, in recognising that the world is still spinning. There it is, spinning around perfectly happily. Second thing I think we should take from all this is that Brexit is an example of the establishment being out of touch, not just with the people, but out of touch with inconvenient truths. So we should start asking ourselves, as we should have done after the financial crisis and didn't, what else is the establishment ignoring because it's focused on short-term politics, short-term business, economic decisions? And so we should start focusing a bit more on things like risks from climate change, from global pandemic, from antibiotic resistance, from shortages of water and shortages of food and even energy in the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So there's big things we should be thinking about, we aren't thinking about, and we should really try and take something positive from Brexit, which is to say, okay, the establishment isn't working for us all very well. Let's work out the things we should be focusing on, that should be headlining the media all the time, and the great things we could be doing and should be doing to try and deal with them. That's what should be, at the end, the focus of our debate. So, that's it for another video. If you've got comments, I'm sure you have, please try and keep the debate civil down in the comments section down there. And I hope to talk to you again very soon.